from across the Federation, spanning the region and covering the globe. This is the Kiss FM SKN News Now Evening Edition, your one true source for news. And now your presenter.
Good evening, I'm Ebony Brandon. Today is Tuesday, 7th February 2017. This is the SKN News Now Evening Edition. In the headlines tonight nationally, another failing grade for Team Unity, this time from former Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Dr. Denzil Douglas. Regionally, Muslim leaders in Trinidad and Tobago are calling on the Attorney General to rethink proposed changes to the country's anti-terrorism laws. And internationally, Afghan aid workers are racing against the clock to get aid to survivors of a deadly avalanche. We've got the details of these stories and more straight ahead in this evening's edition of SKN News Now. Leader of the opposition, the Right Honourable Dr. Denzil Douglas, has joined a throng of others in assessing the performance of the Dr. Timothy Harris-led coalition government. This morning, Dr. Douglas said the Unity Coalition must be assessed on their performance based on the promises they made before assuming office. In this regard, Dr. Douglas said the government has failed the people of St. Kitts and Nevis as they have not kept several key promises which formed the basis of the election campaign. He also pointed a finger directly at Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris, accusing him of poor leadership and failed policies.
The Prime Ministership of Timothy Harris has been a failure to date. And this is because there is an analysis of the policies that it has pursued which are not geared to addressing the ever-pressing issues of crime, especially gun crime, murders, house break-ins, and rapes. Not issues which are addressing the high cost of living or the high unemployment level or serious challenges in the health sector at both the community and institutional based levels. And the education of our children. They are not policies addressing these issues. But the government, instead, over the last 2 years, has been pursuing policies to deceive, to mislead, and openly practice lying to our people as they enrich themselves through a well-organized network of nepotism and cronyism.
The former Prime Minister also condemned attacks on local media practitioners by the government and its operatives and described this as another example of the failure of the government. The Unity Coalition vowed while in opposition to pass freedom of information legislation within its first year in office. This has not been done. Rather, several local media practitioners from Kiss FM, Win FM and Freedom FM have been subjected to vicious personal attacks by government officials and their operatives. The basis of the attacks on the media stems from an apparent disapproval that a number of stories have been broken in recent times, which have revealed several questionable actions on the part of government officials. These stories have included government ministers drawing two salaries monthly, the incorporation of a building supply company by another, and a mounting government travel bills on trivial trips overseas. Dr. Douglas said these attacks are unfortunate as the media is one mechanism through which a government can be held accountable for its actions.
Instead of delivering on its promise that in the first 100 days they would pass the Freedom of Information Act. Instead of the administration doing all of these things that it promised, it has shown utter disregard, or utter regard and total disregard and disrespect to the press, and has targeted persons in the media, either through the social media, using characters like Mabel and Andre Liebert, or through the national media, where the Prime Minister in his press conferences and in Parliament under statement by ministers have carried out a vicious and vile and degrading attack on members of the media simply because they exercise their rights to ask questions of accountability and transparency in the government's own agenda of good governance.
The St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party national leader also highlighted other unfulfilled promises on the part of the government.
It was this government that said in the first 100 days it would operationalize the Integrity in Public Life Act. And to date, as we assess how much it has achieved, it has failed to do so. The government has refused and failed to put in place the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly, the Parliament of St. Kitts and Nevis, so that the Parliament is denied the truth of the claim that the Prime Minister improved his own private residence to the tune of $1 million. To date, the Public Accounts Committee has not had the opportunity to examine any records to determine the truth or lie in that matter, whether it was $1 million, $1.5 million, whether it was truthfully for the improvement of security or not. The Parliament deserves to know, and the Public Accounts Committee is that internal body of the Parliament that can question these matters.
In other news, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris's heels are once again being held to the flames by a member of his own People's Labour Party executive. Clecton Phillip, the PLP's General Secretary, has sounded off this time with a warning. When you hear dogs barking, it's because they're protecting something, referring to the members of his party. Mr. Phillip, like the parliamentary opposition, is challenging Dr. Harris and the Team Unity Coalition to enact the Integrity in Public Life Act, which had already been passed by the previous Labour administration. A Freedom of Information Act, as was promised by by Team Unity while in opposition, and also to establish a functioning Public Accounts Committee. Mr. Phillips' argument is that these three actions will go a long way in demonstrating the transparency and accountability to which the government repeatedly lays claim. Philip pointed out that it is meaningless to proclaim one's honesty without evidence to support the claim. He urged the government to, quote, provide the evidence to support what you're saying, especially at this time when it appears that a majority of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis do not trust the Team Unity members of Cabinet. Mr. Phillip continued with a warning to Prime Minister Harris that if he were Tim Harris, he would be more worried about his responses to questions under oath in a court of law. In the widely circulated essay, Phillip also cautioned the Prime Minister that his loud protestations scared no one and furthermore would not hamper an inquiry into the operations of the PLP mandated by the party's executive and founding members. Mr. Phillip also said that despite all else, there will be an accounting for the 2015 election campaign contributions, which are believed to be in the region of 10 million EC dollars. The PLP General Secretary also launched an attack on Minister of Public Infrastructure, Urban Development, Transport and Post, Honorable Ian Patches-Liebert, urging him to come clean about forming a private building materials business in August 2016, an act which gave birth to a national controversy. With the government's second anniversary in office quickly approaching, Philip called for more integrity, accountability and transparency in public office, noting that this is exactly what Team Unity called for whilst in opposition, and which Team Unity promised to do in an expeditious manner if elected. In other news, escalating criminal activity continues to plague the Federation. Last Friday evening, a spate of robberies occurred on Port Zante. SKN News now understands that a number of stores were burgled, including the restaurant Taiwan Tasty. We were able to speak with the owner of this restaurant, who provided a description of what occurred and the list of purloined property.
It's happened around in the middle of the night, because I left at 8:30 in the night and it was okay. And I don't know what happened during this time until next morning. One of the police, he called me that I should be in my store immediately because somebody just broke into. So when I go into and check it and something is gone, like my cash, laptop, iPad and my TV, like some big materials. They took all my electronic stuff. For the cash is about 1,000 US, and it's not including that, like the laptop and the TV. So I think it's called like 3,000.
There has not been to date any announcement from the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force regarding these robberies. St. Kitts and Nevis has recorded its steepest decline in goods exported to the United States in the first 11 months of 2016 in comparison to the same period over the last 6 years. According to the foreign trade statistics issued by the U.S. Census Bureau, goods and services exported to the U.S. between January and November 2016 were valued at U.S. $45.7 million US dollars, compared to U.S. $53 million in 2015, $51.9 million US in 2014 for the same 11-month period. In 2013, goods and services exported to the United States for the 11-month period were valued at $49.1 million EC, or that is US $49.1 million US in 2012, $52.3 million US in 2011, $49.9 million in 2010, $46.2 million, and in 2009, $45 million. For the same 11-month period in 2016, Antigua and Barbuda exported $14.8 million, Barbados $46.7 million US dollars, Dominica $2.5 million, Anguilla $3.9 million, the British Virgin Islands $10 million, Grenada $11.9 million, St. Martin $77.5 million, St. Vincent and the Grenadines $2.1 million, and St. Lucia $13.1 million US dollars. St. Kitts and Nevis companies that export products to the U.S. are Lutron Limiga, Harrow Servo, St. Kitts Limited, Cajola Cristada, CSR DDL, Jaro Electronics, and Carabel Batik, whose products are also purchased by cruise passengers and stay-over visitors. Newly launched Nevis Reformation Party candidate Virgil Brown says a yachting marina could give Nevis the tourism edge it desperately needs. Speaking recently on his new radio program Real Talk, Mr. Brown shared his thoughts on the impact a marina could have on the sister island.
I think we are missing out on a big piece or chunk of tourism, and that is developing a yachting community. We are already selling Nevis as a executive sort of resort island. Now, people who own yachts have money. They're very expensive and they spend money. St. Lucia have a thriving yachting community. You have BVI. I mean, there's so much money that you can make just by having a marina. They can come, they can service the yachts, they can enjoy Nevis. They know you have a central point in the Caribbean. I mean, we fall smack dead center in the Caribbean. That they can go either north or south. It's a perfect spot. Yeah. It's a perfect spot, and I think that we are missing something.
Brown, who is expected to contest the St. James seat in the island's upcoming local government elections, also noted that if a cruise industry is developed on Nevis, it must be done sustainably.
Over the years, we have seen the cruise industry being developed on St. Kitts, maybe not so in Nevis, but it's doing very well now. And this is another area where we can develop
I feel so.
We could have sustainability.
That was Virgil Brown. Still to come in regional developments this evening, a Barbadian business's decision to import coconut water from Guyana is causing a major uproar on the Caribbean island. We have the details in just a moment. Muslim leaders in Trinidad and Tobago are calling on the Attorney General to reconsider his plan to make changes to the country's anti-terrorism laws.
Local Muslim leaders call on the Attorney General to reconsider planned changes to the Anti-Terrorism Act. At the post-cabinet briefing on Thursday, the Attorney General Al-Rawi said government intends to include suspected individuals who make threats, travel to certain locations, or receive training abroad or commit acts outside of Trinidad. Outside the Parliament today, the head of the Islamic Front said if changes are made, it would be chaotic.
I fear that the Attorney General and the government is being, how should I say it, is being influenced by some of the behavior of some of our world leaders and so on, in particular Donald Trump and his administration. One of those countries in particular, Saudi Arabia, and we know fully well how much of our citizens are working presently in Saudi Arabia and have business affiliation in Saudi Arabia. That is definitely going to affect us.
He also said his group has not received any list of Muslim people who are a threat to this country.
The list of names that he've indicated are involved in terrorism, with the list of groups that he's talking about. I'm yet to get a list of those names and those individuals or those groups. I, who have wide knowledge of a number of issues as it relates to Muslims in this country, don't know of any individual that pose a terrorist threat to this country.
Meanwhile, the head of the Islamic Missionaries Guild, Imtiaz Mohammed, said if people leave this country to perform IS acts, they aren't likely to return.
To go and fight with ISIS, they have no intentions of returning to Trinidad and Tobago. Right? That is they have gone there, they have decided to do that, not based on their own opinion in terms of being a non-religious one. They have based their need to go there in a religious one that they believe that will take them, that they will die as martyrs and eventually attain the highest heaven.
In Guyana, as police continue their investigation into the alleged leak of nursing examination papers, Minister of Public Health Valda Lawrence announced that the students who wrote that particular examination will have to resit it. More from Royden James.
Nursing students who wrote the clinical and functional examination last October were informed that the examinations paper had been leaked and therefore they would have to rewrite the exams. The announcement had sparked a protest as students believed the accusations were false. The police were later called in by former Health Minister Dr. George Norton. The new Public Health Minister, Valda Lawrence, on Monday explained that a 4-month-old impasse has almost come to an end.
The Ministry of Education will act on behalf of the Ministry of Public Health. So one, to engage its personnel to prepare the multiple choice questions to administer those questions on the 21st of February, to have a group of persons recruited to mark the essay part of the questions. And so on the 28th of February, it is expected that the results from the examinations will be presented.
The declaration of the results will be no later than March 4, the minister explained. Some 150 students were affected.
During this period, the Nursing Council have agreed to provide tutoring for those students who are involved, because not all of the students who wrote the examinations did both parts. So it would be only those students who would have written the multiple choice aspect of the examinations. And this will be for all the students from all the nursing schools.
Additionally, the minister said that she has met with the Nursing Council and students and that all parties have agreed with the new approach. One of the student nurses, a representative of the student body, expressed his gratitude.
It has been stressful on our behalf. It has been very disturbing. However, we're just grateful that it has come to a resolution, and it seems fair that this will benefit both us, the students, and the nursing profession in a whole.
Minister Lawrence said that she has not yet received word from the Guyana Police Force with regards to the state of investigation, but assured that investigations are continuing.
The Barbados Agricultural Society is up in arms over a local business's decision to import 900 cases of coconut water from Guyana. As Fenella Wedderbird reports, the society says this should not be allowed to happen in a country which has the capacity to produce the product locally.
Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Agricultural Society, James Paul, is hopping mad at reports that another batch of controversial imports has landed in the island. This time around, it's not chicken wings, but coconut water. Paul tells Barbados Today he's aware a local business has imported 900 cases of coconut water from Guyana. He blasted the move, saying it undermines the island's scarce foreign reserves and jeopardizes jobs. He's urging Barbadians to boycott the foreign product.
But you understand they are not on the shelves. I am hoping, of course, that they do not go on the shelves. And I will say this too, I'm appealing to Barbadians that any coconut water that they see here on the shelves, I'm appealing to Barbadians that we make up, that they insist on buying it, okay? Because certainly, right, for something that we should be doing here for ourselves, it should not happen, and we need to stop importing things into this country that we can produce here. And that instead of the private sector finding a way to help Barbadians to earn money for themselves, they should not be undermining the very existence of this country by engaging in this type of reckless act.
Coming up in the international segment of SKN News Now, African military forces are making efforts to get aid to the survivors of a deadly avalanche. The details up next. Afghan forces have been attempting to deliver supplies after avalanches in the Nuristan province have destroyed homes and left at least 119 people dead.
A deadly blanket of snow cloaks the Afghan mountains. Avalanches here in the Nuristan province have killed at least 119 people, according to officials. Meanwhile, nearly 200 homes have been destroyed by the heavy snowfall. Now, rescue teams make their way across the treacherous routes, attempting to deliver food supplies through snow-blocked roads. In the area near the Pakistan border, 2 whole villages lie buried in snow.
طبیعی حوادث به هر حیوان که صدمه رسولای شي خو زموږ په حیوان کې دا صدمه ځکه ممکن ډیره شي چې زموږ امکانات محدود دي تحمیل شوی جگری طبعا زموږ امکانات محدود کړي دي او نیازمندو کسانو ته.
The United Nations has offered its help with the efforts as the Afghani government ploughs on with limited resources.
Foreign ministers of the European Union are gathered in Brussels for a Foreign Affairs Council meeting. The talks are focused on the security situation in Egypt and Libya. EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini says ministers are also addressing measures to reduce violence in Ukraine. British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, however, says the UK will insist that there's no case for easing sanctions against Russia.
That declaration on Libya was signed, as you said, in Malta last week, and the plan really indicates a strong sign from European leaders to crack down on illegal migration. 90% of arrivals along the central Mediterranean route do obviously come from Libya. Now, the EU has agreed to provide €200 million for projects aimed at preventing migrants from crossing the Mediterranean from the Libyan coast, and it will target smuggler networks and illegal trafficking routes. The EU will also help to train, equip and support Libya's National Coast Guard. Now, many have criticised this deal. Rule of law is barely functioning in Libya, and essentially migration is being delegated to a country that hasn't signed the Geneva Convention on Refugees. But in this deal, the EU says that it will work with the support of UN agencies and local NGOs to help manage the Libyan camps where refugees and migrants are held. So does that do enough on ensuring human rights? Well, that does remain to be seen. But even in its press release following the meeting of foreign ministers today, the human rights abuse of migrants by Libyan authorities was once again underlined. But another aspect highlighted today was the need for Libya to really own their migration problem. Well, definitely now through this deal, there's no escaping that for now. But foreign ministers also said that with Libya, they're here to their support for Libya goes beyond migration. They also want to see a political transition in Libya, and they will support it. On Egypt, discussions were on two fronts. They were on migration, but also on counterterrorism. Now, in the last 3 years, the EU has provided €320 million of assistance to Egypt, with an association council set for spring 2017. This meeting looked at priorities for the next 3 years, which include economic, political and social development in Egypt. Now, the relationship with Egypt is important because of its the country's own relations with African and Arab countries, and so the EU sees Egypt then as a key partner for Libya and the Middle East peace process, and that was underlined today by Ms. Mogherini when she spoke just a short while ago.
The Tamaulipas Institute for Migrants says the Mexican city of Nuevo Laredo receives more deportees from the United States than any other city in the country. Many of these migrants are at risk when back in Mexico as they are preyed upon by drug cartels. Markin Markovits reports.
Pastor Gilberto Ramirez runs a Christian shelter for deported migrants in the Mexican border city of Nuevo Laredo. It's a tough task in a city that has been overwhelmed by crime and drug cartels. And it has almost cost him his life.
They lowered the window and took out the gun and told me to get in the car. They said they knew where my family lived. They knew where I worked and where my daughters go to school. They knew everything about me.
According to the Tamaulipas Institute for Migrants, between January and July of 2016, 45% of U.S. deportees arrived in Nuevo Laredo, more than any other city in Mexico. It has become fertile ground for drug cartel groups trying to extort and recruit these penniless and desperate migrants who are often deported in the middle of the night. The Mexican government and religious groups have been working to catch these people before the gangs do.
Just across the border in Mexico, the Tamaulipas Institute for Migrants has been sheltering deportees and providing them money so they can go back to their hometowns and reconnect with their families.
Hola. Father Giovanni Visotto comes to the Institute twice a day to pick up deported migrants and provides them with shelter. He has been working with Mexican and U.S. officials to improve and coordinate drop-off times of deportees on the border, which he says is one of the key problems of this crisis.
The United States deports them to the closest border area, but we know that in reality, most of the cities on the border are very dangerous. The immigrant is unprotected. They come from another place, and many times they don't know how to defend themselves.
Father Visoto worries that the new U.S. administration will deport millions of migrants back to Mexico. He says border cities like Nuevo Laredo won't be able to handle the massive amount of people arriving to the border, worsening a crisis already out of control.
And that wraps up the international developments this evening. Now for a recap of our headlines. Nationally, another failing grade for Team Unity, this time from former Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Dr. Denzel Douglas. Regionally, Muslim leaders in Trinidad and Tobago are calling on the Attorney General to rethink proposed changes to the country's anti-terrorism laws. And internationally, Afghan aid workers are racing against the clock to get aid to the survivors of a deadly avalanche. Stay with us, still to come, Sports Zone. Tonight in Sports Zone, 110 million people tuned in to watch the Super Bowl on Sunday. But a great number of them were there just to see the ads, not the game. We'll be back with the details in a moment. More than 110 million television viewers tuned in to see the New England Patriots once again crowned Super Bowl champions on Sunday night. Some of the ads televised this year addressed more political and social issues, reflecting the current state of affairs in the U.S. and worldwide. Maylee has the story.
It's a long-standing Super Bowl tradition, closely watching all the multi-million-dollar TV ads during the big game, and they are worth it.
America, we're in for at least 4 years of awful hair.
What the is going on? How the can you be John Malkovich?
But humor aside, this year some brands took on a more serious tone to address political and social issues. Budweiser's ad, Born the Hard Way, is a tribute to company founder Adolphus Busch, a German immigrant. Shot before the U.S. presidential election, the ad's debut was unexpectedly timely given Trump's recent travel ban.
Welcome to America. We don't want it here. Go back home.
Gender equality is the message in this Audi commercial featuring a go-kart racing young girl and her father.
What do I tell my daughter? Do I tell her that despite her education, her drive, her skills, her intelligence, she will automatically be valued as less than every man she ever meets? Or maybe I'll be able to tell her something different.
They're responding to their customers. And the customers want to know what these companies stand for, what they believe, how they express themselves, what values they have.
But it's not just advertising that's used to reflect values. Businesses are also responding to public pressure. For example, Nordstrom's and Neiman Marcus dropped Ivanka Trump's fashion collection. CEO of Uber, Travis Kalanick, quit Trump's Economic Advisory Council after users boycotted the service. And Starbucks vowed to hire 10,000 refugees in response to Trump's travel ban.
Values have political implications. They have social implications. They have day-to-day implications. And as they relate to a brand, they're really going to have implications at the cash register. And ultimately, that's what counts.
But there are limits to a message, especially during the Super Bowl. Building supplier 84 Lumber's ad was deemed too controversial for broadcast and was edited. The original version depicts a mother and daughter's journey to the U.S. from Mexico, but a wall keeps them out. That portion was removed. The full ad, however, was posted online, causing 84 Lumber's website to crash on Sunday.
Alistair Cook says playing under another England captain will not be an issue following his resignation as skipper on Monday. The 32-year-old opening batsman who led England to a record 59 times in Tests told the media earlier today that leading the team requires a captain to give 100%. And after much soul-searching, he knew he wasn't able to consistently give his all any longer.
It's an incredible honour to be England captain, and I've loved every single minute of being it, and having the support from the fans, the players, the coach has been unbelievable, and I'll miss that. But it's a job you need to do it at 100%, and you need to be committed to everything to do. And unfortunately, I've gone to well a few times, and I had to be really honest and look in the mirror, and I couldn't do that anymore. I could do maybe 95%, but it's not a job you can do at 95%. So it's been a sad month or so when the reality of the decision when I made the decision, because I've absolutely loved it. It's been a real privilege to be England captain. It's really hard to sum it up, but there's just something in me which is knows that this job is 100% or nothing, and looking in that mirror and knowing I couldn't do it there was tough. So but I've been very proud of what I've achieved. A lot of people to thank.
He's also throwing his full support behind whoever is selected as his successor, who comes in what he has described as a special time. It's widely believed, however, that Joe Root will be the man to take up the vacant role of England captain.
Whoever gets the job, it's going to be a very special time for him and for them, whoever it is. And they're very lucky because they've got some very talented cricketers to drive forward, and hopefully we can get, we can drive England forward, and we can win a lot more games than we lose.
Finally, tonight, the Confederation of African Football has declared its satisfaction with the Gabon-hosted Africa Cup of Nations. More in this report.
The continent's football governing body has praised Gabon for security arrangements as well as the government's commitment to the tournament. CAF maintains the interest from fans has been unprecedented this year. Its verdict comes just a day after the CAF Executive Council handed Gabon the rights to host this year's Under-17 Africa Cup of Nations after withdrawing hosting rights from Madagascar.
With regard to the level of football that we have seen, there are no small teams anymore. Guinea-Bissau was taking part for the first time and performed remarkably. And then, of course, the historic final between Egypt and Cameroon. So generally, we are happy.
And that wraps up this evening's edition of SKN News Now. On behalf of the entire team here at Kiss FM and the SKN News Now News Desk, I'm Ebony Brandon, wishing you a very pleasant evening. Goodbye.